Imagine discovering that someone you've trusted for years is hiding a disturbing secret right under your nose. A Manhattan millionaire was about to spend another lonely Christmas in his mansion when he heard a sound coming from the basement. A sound that shouldn't exist. When he opened that door, he found something that froze his heart, a child. But it wasn't just any child hidden there. The reason his maid had kept that small life a secret for 2 long years was so shocking, so devastating, that it would forever change the lives of everyone involved. Prepare yourself for a story that will bring tears to your eyes and make you believe that sometimes the greatest miracles are born from the darkest secrets. Snow fell heavily over Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, transforming the city that never sleeps into a fairy tale setting on Christmas Eve. The Tiffany's windows sparkled with golden lights, families rushed by with shopping bags full of gifts, and the aroma of roasted chestnuts hung in the frozen air. But for Richard Sterling, none of that mattered. At 43 years old, Richard was one of the wealthiest men in New York. CEO of Sterling Financial Group, he had built an empire in the financial market worth over $3 billion. His triplex penthouse in one of Fifth Avenue's most exclusive buildings was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, Italian furniture that cost more than entire houses, artwork that could be in MoMA. But all that wealth didn't fill the emptiness that had consumed Richard for 5 years. Since losing his wife Catherine and daughter Emma in a car accident on Christmas Eve 2018, Richard had transformed into an empty shell of himself. He worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, running from the memories that haunted every room of that mansion. Emma's bedroom remained untouched, her toys still arranged exactly as she had left them. Catherine's clothes still hung in the closet, her Chanel perfume still on the vanity. The only person Richard saw regularly was Margaret O'Brien, his housekeeper. Margaret had worked for the Sterlings for almost 15 years. She had been hired when Emma was born and became part of the family. At 58 years old, with gray hair always pulled back in an impeccable bun and blue eyes that hid a deep sadness, Margaret was discreet, efficient, and absolutely trustworthy. Or at least that's what Richard had always believed. On that Christmas Eve of 2023, Richard arrived home earlier than usual. It was only 7 at night when his driver dropped him off at the building's private entrance. Normally, he would stay at the office until midnight, but something about that day, perhaps the 5th Christmas Eve without his family, made him want to be home. Upon entering the silent penthouse, Richard noticed something strange. Margaret, who usually came to take his coat and ask about dinner, was nowhere to be found. The house was too quiet, even by usual standards. "Margaret," he called out, taking off his Burberry overcoat and hanging it in the marble entryway closet. Silence. Richard walked through the art corridor, his footsteps echoing on the Italian marble floor. He passed the living room with its lit fireplace, the library with thousands of books he hadn't read since Catherine's death, the private office where he closed million-dollar deals. "Margaret, are you here?" That's when he heard it. A low sound, muffled, coming from somewhere below him. A sound that made his heart race inexplicably. It sounded like laughter? A child's laughter? Impossible. There were no children in that building. There had been no children in his life for 5 years. Richard followed the sound, his instincts guiding him to a door he rarely opened. The basement door. The penthouse had a private basement where old furniture, equipment, and memories were stored. Boxes and boxes of photos, clothes, and toys that Richard didn't have the courage to look at, but also couldn't bring himself to discard. The sound became clearer as he approached the door. It was definitely a child. A small voice, humming something. With a trembling hand, Richard turned the doorknob and descended the wooden steps that creaked under his feet. The spiral staircase led to a large, well-lit space, very different from the dark and dusty basement he expected to find. And there, among boxes and covered furniture, Richard Sterling saw something that made his world stop. A girl. A little girl about 6 years old, with curly brown hair falling over her shoulders, wearing a simple pink cotton dress. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by children's books and toys, drawing something in a notebook with colored pencils. And beside her, frozen in absolute shock with a tray of food in her hands, was Margaret. "Mr. Sterling." Margaret's voice came out as a strangled whisper, her face turning as pale as the snow falling outside. The tray trembled in her hands. The girl looked up, her huge green eyes wide with fright. She grabbed a teddy bear against her chest and shrank back, as if expecting to be punished. Richard couldn't process what he was seeing. His brain refused to accept the surreal scene before him. A child. In his basement. A child who, judging by that organized little corner with a small bed, a bookshelf, toys, and even some drawings hanging on the wall, had been there for a very long time. Margaret. Richard finally found his voice, though it came out hoarse and unrecognizable. What is going on here? Tears began streaming down Margaret's face. The tray fell from her hands, making a crash that echoed through the basement. Plates and silverware scattered across the floor. "Mr. Sterling, I can explain," she sobbed, bringing her trembling hands to her face. "Then explain." Richard's voice rose, a mixture of shock, confusion, and something he couldn't identify. "There's a child in my basement. A child who, apparently, has been living here. How long, Margaret? How long?" Margaret fell to her knees, tears now falling freely. 2 years. She whispered. "She's been here for 2 years, Mr. Sterling." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard felt his legs weaken. 2 years. His trusted housekeeper had hidden a child in his home for 2 entire years. How was that possible? How had he never noticed? But the question that really mattered, the question that made Richard's heart nearly leap out of his chest, was different. "Who is this child, Margaret?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "And why, in God's name, did you hide her in my basement?" Margaret looked at the girl with a love so deep, so painful, that Richard felt something stir in his petrified chest. "Because," Margaret began, her voice breaking, "because if I didn't hide her, Mr. Sterling, she would die." Margaret's words echoed through the basement like a gunshot. "If I didn't hide her, she would die." Richard felt the air escape from his lungs. He looked at the girl, who was now crying silently, clutching the teddy bear as if it were the only solid thing in her world. Her green eyes were swollen with tears, and she trembled with fear. "Margaret, stand up," Richard ordered, his voice controlled but firm. He was a businessman, accustomed to crisis situations, but nothing in his career had prepared him for this. "We're going upstairs. Now. And you're going to tell me absolutely everything." Margaret nodded, wiping away tears with the back of her hands. She turned to the girl and spoke with a tenderness Richard had never heard in her voice. "Lily, sweetheart, don't be afraid. Everything's going to be okay. I promise." Lily. So the child had a name. The girl nodded timidly, her brown curls bouncing as she squeezed the teddy bear even tighter against her chest. The 3 of them climbed the stairs in tense silence. Richard in front, Margaret in the middle, and Lily last, her small bare feet making almost imperceptible sounds on the wooden steps. When they reached the living room, Richard pointed to the gray velvet Italian sofa. "Sit down," he told Margaret, his voice sharp. Then he looked at Lily, and something in his chest tightened seeing the terror in the child's eyes. He softened his tone. "You too, Lily. No one's going to hurt you." Lily sat in the farthest corner of the sofa, curled up like a frightened little bird. Margaret sat beside her, instinctively placing a protective arm around the girl's small shoulders. Richard poured himself a whiskey, 25-year Macallan, and took a long sip before turning to Margaret. He stood with his back to the crackling fireplace, his gray eyes fixed on his housekeeper. "Start from the beginning," he said. And don't leave anything out. Margaret took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she stroked Lily's hair. Lily is my granddaughter, she began, and Richard felt the shock course through his body again. My daughter Sarah's child. Richard frowned. In 15 years working together, Margaret had never mentioned a daughter. He had always assumed she had no family. You have a daughter? He asked, incredulous. Had, Margaret corrected, her voice breaking on the word. Sarah died 2 years ago. Heroin overdose in an abandoned apartment in the Bronx. Tears began falling down Margaret's face again, but she continued. Sarah had problems with drugs since she was 17, Mr. Sterling. I tried everything. Rehab clinics, therapy, support. Nothing worked. She entered the world of drugs and never managed to get out. When she got pregnant at 20, I thought it would be her salvation. That having a baby would make her want to live, want to recover. Margaret looked at Lily with devastating love. And for a while, it worked. When Lily was born, Sarah stayed clean for almost a year. But then she met a man. Tyler Morrison. A drug dealer from the Bronx. He got her back on drugs, and this time it was worse. Much worse. Richard listened in silence, his whiskey forgotten in his hand. When Sarah died, I found Lily alone in the apartment, Margaret continued, her voice trembling. She was 4 years old. She was hungry, dirty, terrified. There were marks of abuse on her little body. Tyler, he beat her. Used her to beg on the streets, to get money for drugs. Rage began boiling in Richard's chest. He knew this kind of scum. He had seen cases like this on the news, but never imagined it would come so close to home. Why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you go to social services? Richard asked. That's when Margaret looked directly into his eyes, and what Richard saw there was pure terror. Because Tyler is dangerous, Mr. Sterling. Very dangerous. He has connections with a violent gang in the Bronx. When Sarah died, he started looking for Lily. Not because he cared about her, but because... Margaret swallowed hard. Because he planned to sell her. The whiskey glass nearly fell from Richard's hand. Sell her. To a human trafficking scheme, Margaret whispered, as if saying the words out loud made them more real. I heard him talking with other men, saying he could get a lot of money for young, pretty merchandise. He already had a buyer. Richard felt nausea rise in his throat. He looked at Lily, who was now crying silently, clearly understanding more than a 6-year-old should. I panicked, Margaret continued. I took Lily and ran. But I had nowhere to go. Tyler knew my house in Queens. Knew my friends, my neighbors. If I went to the police or social services, there would be records. Documents. Tyler has corrupt contacts, people who would tip him off. And then he would find her. So you brought her here, Richard concluded, beginning to understand. I had no choice. Margaret burst out, tears flowing freely now. This was the only safe place I knew. You never went down to the basement. You went days without really seeing me, lost in your work and your grief. I thought I could keep her hidden just for a while. Until things cooled down. Until Tyler gave up or got arrested. 2 years, Margaret, Richard said, his voice softer now. 2 years is much more than a while. I know, she sobbed. But I couldn't. Every time I thought about taking her out of here, I'd hear news about Tyler still on the loose, still searching. 3 months ago, one of his gang members was arrested for human trafficking. The police uncovered a horrible scheme. Children being sold, Mr. Sterling. Children Lily's age. Margaret hugged her granddaughter tighter. If he finds her, she'll have a fate worse than death. So yes, I hid her. I lied to you. I betrayed your trust. But I saved her life. And I would do it all over again. Silence filled the room, broken only by the crackling of the fire and Lily's muffled sobs. Richard looked at that frightened child, so small and fragile, carrying trauma that no child should know. He looked at Margaret, a woman who had always been loyal, who had always served his family with absolute dedication, now destroyed by a secret she had carried alone for 2 years. And then Richard did something that surprised himself. He knelt in front of Lily, getting to eye level with her. "Lily," he said softly, "you're safe now. Understand? No one is going to hurt you here." The girl looked at him with those huge green eyes, full of tears and fragile hope. "Promise." Her voice came out as a broken whisper. And Richard Sterling, the man who had sworn never to care about anything or anyone again after losing his family, felt something break inside his chest of ice. "I promise." Richard Sterling didn't sleep that night. After Margaret's shocking revelation, he had insisted that Lily sleep in one of the guest rooms on the second floor, a room with proper heating, a real bed, not that claustrophobic space in the basement where she had spent 2 years of her short life. Now, at 3 in the morning on Christmas Day, Richard was in his office, looking through the panoramic window at Central Park covered in snow. The city sparkled with millions of lights, but all he could see was Lily's frightened face, her green eyes full of a fear no child should know. He took a sip of his already cold coffee and opened his laptop. His fingers flew over the keyboard, searching. Tyler Morrison. Bronx gangs. Human trafficking in New York. Every article he read made his rage grow. Tyler Morrison had an extensive criminal record: assault, drug possession, threats. But nothing that kept him in prison for very long. The system was broken, and men like Tyler knew exactly how to manipulate it. Richard found a photo of him in a daily news article from 6 months ago. Tyler was a large, heavy man with neck tattoos and dead eyes of someone who had sold his soul long ago. The article mentioned his connection to the Los Diablos gang, known for drug trafficking and, more recently, suspected of involvement in human trafficking networks. Richard's stomach turned. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his dark thoughts. Margaret entered, looking like she had aged 10 years in one night. Her dark circles were deep, her face pale. "Mr. Sterling, I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice hoarse from crying so much. "For not sending me away. For not calling the police. For not—" "Sit down, Margaret," Richard interrupted, pointing to the leather armchair in front of his desk. She obeyed, her hands trembling in her lap. "I spent the night researching," Richard began, turning the laptop so she could see the screen. "Tyler Morrison is even more dangerous than you imagine. There's a federal investigation underway into Los Diablos. The FBI suspects a trafficking network operating between New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut." Margaret turned even paler. "But here's the good news," Richard continued, his voice taking on the authoritative CEO tone that closed billion-dollar deals. "I have contacts. Good contacts. James Bradley from the FBI owes me some favors. We can use that." "Mr. Sterling, no." Margaret stood up abruptly, panic in her eyes. "Any official movement, any document, any record. Tyler will find out. He has informants. When Sarah died, I saw how he operated. He knew things that only someone with connections inside the police would know." Richard leaned back in his chair, processing this. "So what do you suggest? That we keep Lily hidden forever? She's 6 years old, Margaret. She needs to go to school, see the sun, have a real life." "I know." Margaret sobbed. "You think I don't know that? Every day that passes, my heart breaks seeing her confined, isolated. But I prefer that too." She couldn't finish the sentence. It was at that moment that a third voice, small and frightened, echoed through the doorway. Grandma! Both turned. Lily was at the door, barefoot, wearing flannel pajamas that Margaret had secretly bought and kept in the basement. Her teddy bear was clutched against her chest, and tears streamed down her small face. "I had a nightmare," she whispered. "The bad man was taking me away again." Margaret ran to her, hugging her tightly. "Shoo, sweetheart, it was just a dream. You're safe." Richard watched the scene, and something moved inside him. That desperate embrace between grandmother and granddaughter was so similar to the memories he had of Catherine hugging Emma. He stood up and knelt in front of Lily, as he had done before. "Lily, look at me," he said softly. The girl looked, her huge green eyes still wet with tears. "That bad man. Tyler, he won't find you. I won't allow it. Understand?" "But he's strong," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "He hurt my mommy. He hurt me. He said if I ran away, he would find me. That no one could hide me from him." Rage boiled in Richard's chest with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. "Lily, I'm stronger than him," Richard said, and there was a deadly promise in his voice. "Do you know who I am? I'm Richard Sterling. I built an empire. I have resources Tyler Morrison never dreamed of having. And I promise you, he will never, ever lay his hands on you again." For the first time, Richard saw something in Lily's eyes that wasn't fear. It was hope. "Promise for real?" she asked. "I promise." Margaret looked at Richard with mixed gratitude and disbelief. But the moment was broken by the shrill sound of Richard's phone ringing. He looked at the screen and frowned. It was an unknown number. At 3:30 in the morning on Christmas Day. His businessman's instinct made him answer. "Hello." What he heard on the other end made his blood freeze. A thick, drawling, dangerous voice. "Sterling. I have a message for you. I know you're hiding something that belongs to me. Valuable merchandise. And I want it back." Richard looked at Margaret and Lily, seeing absolute terror stamped on both their faces. Margaret brought her hand to her mouth, stifling a scream. "Who are you?" Richard asked, though he already knew the answer. A low, menacing laugh echoed through the phone. "Tyler Morrison. And that child you're hiding? She's mine. My woman's daughter. And I'm coming to get her. Could be tomorrow, could be next week, could be a month from now. But I'm coming for her. And when I do, Mr. Sterling." He paused, loaded with malice. "You're going to wish you never got involved in this. How did you get my number?" Richard asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I have eyes everywhere. And now, I have eyes on you. Merry Christmas, Sterling. Enjoy it while you can." The line went dead. Richard stood frozen, the phone still in his hand, processing what had just happened. Tyler knew. Knew where Lily was. Knew Richard was involved. Margaret was in total panic, hugging Lily so tight the girl could barely breathe. "He knows," she cried. "My God, he knows. How did he find out? How?" Richard looked around his office, his businessman's mind analyzing the situation coldly. Tyler had mentioned eyes everywhere. That meant surveillance. Informants. Maybe even. His eyes fixed on the panoramic window. From there, with proper equipment, someone could easily watch his apartment. From the building across. From several angles. They were being watched. And now, the war had begun. Richard grabbed his phone again and dialed a number. It was answered on the second ring. "James Bradley? This is Richard Sterling. I know it's Christmas Day, but I need you. Now. We have a situation, and it's urgent." Lily cried in Margaret's arms. Margaret cried in despair. And Richard Sterling, for the first time in 5 years, felt something beyond emptiness. He felt fury, determination, and a purpose he thought had died along with his family. No one would threaten a child under his roof. No one. Tyler Morrison had made a fatal mistake. He had challenged the wrong man. James Bradley arrived at Richard Sterling's penthouse at 5 in the morning on Christmas Day, accompanied by 2 FBI agents. Bradley was a tall man, 50 years old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much in his career. He and Richard had known each other since college at Harvard, and Bradley owed Richard enough favors to fill a book. "This is more serious than I imagined," Bradley said after hearing the whole story, his eyes alternating between a terrified Margaret and Lily hiding behind her. "Tyler Morrison isn't just on our lists. He's on the lists of 3 federal agencies. The man is a plague." Richard served coffee to everyone in the living room, the tension in the air so thick it could be cut with a knife. "But there's a problem," Bradley continued, accepting the cup of coffee. "Officially, I can't do anything without proper documentation. Lily needs to be registered in the child protection system. We need legal custody, medical reports, psychological." "Absolutely not." Margaret exploded. "I already told you, Tyler has informants. The moment there's any official paper, any record in the system, he'll know." "Margaret's right," Richard said, his voice firm. "Tyler called me 2 hours ago. He already knows Lily is here. That means he has surveillance, contacts, resources. If we go through official channels, we'll be painting a target on her back." Bradley sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "So what do you want me to do, Richard? My hands are tied without legal documentation." It was at that moment that Richard had an idea. His eyes gleamed with the same cunning he used to close impossible deals. "What if there's a way to protect Lily without official records? A way to keep her off the radar while you build a case against Tyler?" Bradley leaned forward, interested. "Go on. You said there's a federal investigation into Los Diablos and human trafficking. Focus on that. Use resources to watch Tyler, build a solid case against him. Meanwhile, I take care of Lily here. Discreetly. No papers, no records." "That's irregular, Richard." "Irregular has saved this child's life so far," Richard countered. "Tyler is looking for a girl in the system, in shelters, in records. He's not looking for a child living with a reclusive millionaire on Fifth Avenue." Bradley looked at Lily, who was now sitting on the sofa, hugging her teddy bear, her big eyes watching the conversation that was deciding her fate. "How much time do you need?" Richard asked. "To build a solid federal case? 6 months. Maybe a year." "Then you have 6 months," Richard decided. "I keep Lily safe here. You take Tyler off the streets permanently. Everyone wins." Bradley was silent for a long moment, weighing the options. "This could cost me my career if they find out," he finally said. "And I could lose much more if we fail," Richard responded, looking at Lily. Bradley sighed deeply. "All right. But we need precautions. Reinforced security. This place needs to be a fortress." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Richard hired an elite private security team, ex-Navy SEALs who worked for high-level protection companies. Surveillance cameras were installed at every angle of the building. Motion sensors, silent alarms, bulletproof glass in the windows. But it was during the security system installation that something unexpected happened. Richard was supervising the camera installation when he felt a small hand touch his sleeve. He looked down and saw Lily, her green eyes looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and fear. "Mr. Sterling." Her voice was so low he could barely hear her. "You can call me Richard," he said, kneeling to get to her level. He was doing this more and more, he realized. "Richard," she tested the name. "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." The question, so simple, so direct, hit Richard like a punch to the stomach. Why was he doing this? A week ago, he barely spoke to Margaret. A week ago, his life was just work and self-imposed loneliness. Because, he began, searching for the right words, because no child deserves to be afraid. And because. He hesitated, because someone very special to me is no longer here for me to protect. But you are. Lily tilted her head, studying him. You had a daughter, she said. It wasn't a question. Richard felt his chest tighten. How do you know? There are pictures. In the basement. I saw them when Grandma was storing boxes there. A beautiful girl with blonde hair. She looked happy. Tears threatened to come, but Richard held them back. Yes. Emma. She would be your age now. Lily placed her small hand over Richard's. I'm sorry she went away. But, she hesitated, I think she'd be happy that you're protecting me. Something broke inside Richard at that moment. Something that had been frozen for 5 years melted under the touch of that frightened child who, despite everything she had suffered, still had enough compassion to comfort him. But the peace was broken that afternoon. One of the security guards found something when checking the building's perimeter, a hidden camera across the street, pointed directly at Richard's penthouse windows. And there was more. A suspicious van had been seen circling the block 3 times in the last few hours. Inside it, men with tattoos that matched descriptions of Los Diablos gang members. Tyler wasn't just watching. He was planning something. Bradley was notified immediately and sent agents to watch the van, but it disappeared before they could intercept it. He's testing our defenses, Bradley told Richard over the phone. Seeing how serious you are about protection. Richard, this man is dangerous. He's not just going to give up. Neither am I, Richard responded, looking through the window where Lily was sitting on the floor, drawing in a new notebook he had bought for her. Margaret was beside her, teaching her to draw a Christmas tree. It was such a normal scene, so peaceful. A scene Richard hadn't seen in his home for 5 years. And he would die before letting Tyler Morrison destroy it. But as the sun set over Manhattan that Christmas day, bringing night and all its shadows, Richard had no way of knowing that the real battle was just beginning. Because Tyler Morrison had more cards up his sleeve than anyone imagined. And he was ready to play them all. Across the city, in a dirty apartment in the Bronx, Tyler looked at a photo on his cell phone. A photo taken by his hidden camera. A photo of Lily at the window of Richard Sterling's penthouse. He smiled, a cold and cruel smile. Found you, little rat, he murmured to the photo. And no one, not even some stuck-up millionaire, is going to stop me from getting what's mine. He dialed a number on his phone. When they answered, he said only 3 words. Execute the plan. And somewhere in the shadows of New York, very dangerous people began to move. The clock was ticking. And no one was safe. 3 days after Christmas, at 2 in the morning, hell came to Fifth Avenue. Richard was in his office, reviewing contracts, when the silent alarm system began flashing. His heart raced. He looked at the security monitors and saw something that made his blood freeze. 4 men dressed in black were forcing their way through the building's service entrance. They had professional tools, knew exactly what they were doing. And they were coming fast. Richard activated the emergency protocol. All armored doors locked automatically. The security guards were alerted. But he knew he had only minutes. He ran to Lily's room. Margaret was already there, having been woken by the same alarm on her smartwatch. She was holding Lily, who was crying in terror. They're here, Margaret whispered, her face white with panic. They came for her. Panic room. Now. Richard ordered. He had installed a state-of-the-art panic room behind a false bookshelf in his library. Designed to withstand anything, with supplies for days, satellite communication, and reinforced steel walls. Richard picked up Lily in his arms. She was trembling violently, her huge green eyes wide with absolute terror. "I promised you'd be safe," he said firmly as he ran through the hallways. "And I don't break my promises." They reached the library. Richard pressed the secret mechanism and the bookshelf slid, revealing the steel door of the panic room. Margaret entered first, then Lily. "Get in with them," one of the guards, Marcus, ex-SEAL, told Richard. "We'll hold them here." But Richard hesitated. Through the security cameras on his smartwatch, he could see the invaders reaching the private elevator. They had weapons. Heavy weapons. "How many guards do we have?" Richard asked. "3 here, 2 at the main entrance. 5 against 4. But the invaders were armed for war. That's when the sound of breaking glass echoed through the apartment. They had blown out the reinforced window. Impossible, but they had done it. "Get in the room," Marcus shouted, pushing Richard. Richard stumbled inside. The door began to close. And that's when he heard it. A scream. Marcus was screaming. Gunshots. The unmistakable sound of gunshots echoing through the marble apartment. Margaret pulled Lily to the farthest corner of the panic room, covering the girl's ears, but it was impossible to block out the sound of chaos outside. Richard was glued to the internal security monitor, watching horrified as his guards fought against the invaders. But they were at a disadvantage. These weren't common criminals. They were professionals. "We need to call the police," Margaret shouted. "They're already coming," Richard responded, but his voice was empty. The police would take 15 minutes to arrive. 15 minutes they didn't have. Through the monitor, Richard saw one of the invaders, a huge man with a skull tattoo on his neck, approach the library bookshelf. He knew. Somehow, they knew about the panic room. The man placed something on the wall. Richard recognized it immediately. "Explosive," he whispered. "What?" Margaret was in total panic. "They're going to blow the entrance." Lily began crying uncontrollably, her small body shaking with sobs. Richard looked around the panic room. There was an emergency exit. A tunnel that led to the building's sewer system, designed for situations exactly like this. But using it meant abandoning the apartment. Abandoning everything. There was no choice. "Margaret, get Lily. We're leaving." "How?" Richard pointed to a panel on the floor. "Emergency tunnel. Leads to the basement. From there, we can get to the parking garage and get out." He was about to open the panel when his phone rang. The number was unknown, but Richard knew exactly who it was. He answered. "Hello, Sterling." Tyler's voice was calm, almost amused. "Enjoying the visit?" "You sent armed men to invade my home," Richard said, his voice trembling with rage. "You're finished, Morrison. The FBI knows about all of this now." "Ah, the FBI," Tyler laughed. "You really think I care? When I get the girl, I'll be out of the country in 2 hours. And you'll be dead. You'll never lay your hands on her," Richard spat. "No." Tyler sounded genuinely curious. "Because my men are literally on the other side of the door. And I have a proposal for you, Sterling. One that might save your life." Richard closed his eyes, knowing what was coming next. "Hand over the girl. Open the door, hand her over, and my men will leave. You live. She comes with me. Simple as that. Go to hell. Then you and your housekeeper die with her," Tyler said coldly. 5, 4, 3. "Wait." Richard shouted. Silence on the other end. Richard looked at Lily. She was in Margaret's arms, crying, trembling, terrified. Just a child. A child who had already suffered so much. a child he had promised to protect. He thought of Emma. How he couldn't save her. How she died while he was stuck in a stupid business meeting. Not again. Never again. You want the girl? Richard said into the phone, his voice strangely calm. Finally being sensible. Then come get her yourself, coward. Send your men away and come here. Personally. If you have the guts. Tyler laughed. You think I'm an idiot? You'll hand me over to the FBI. The FBI isn't here, Richard lied. And if you want Lily, you'll have to go through me. Face to face. No weapons. Know your thugs. Man against man. There was a long pause. You're bluffing. Am I? Richard asked. Do you know me, Morrison? Know who I am? I didn't get where I am by being a coward. You want the girl. Prove you deserve her. Come here. Alone. And fight for her. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Tyler spoke. You've got guts, I'll give you that. But you're an idiot. I accept your challenge. My men will pull back. I'll come up. And when I break every bone in your spoiled playboy body, I'll take the girl and leave. And there'll be no FBI, no police, no one to save you. I'll be waiting, Richard said and hung up. Margaret was looking at him as if he had gone insane. Have you lost your mind? He's going to kill you. Maybe, Richard said, opening a secret compartment in the panic room wall. Inside were weapons. He took one. But while he's focused on me, you two escape. No. Lily screamed, running to him and grabbing his leg. Don't let him hurt you, please. Richard knelt down, holding Lily's small face between his hands. Lily, listen to me. Margaret is going to take you to a safe place. A place I prepared. You'll stay there until this is over. And when it's over. He swallowed the tears that threatened to fall. When it's over, everything will be okay. You promise, she cried. Richard hugged her, perhaps for the last time. I promise. Through the security monitor, he saw the invaders retreating. And then he saw Tyler Morrison entering through the private elevator. Alone. Enormous. Dangerous. Coming to kill him. Richard looked at Margaret. Take her. Now. James Bradley knows where to go. He's waiting. Margaret, with tears streaming down her face, picked up Lily and opened the emergency tunnel panel. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice breaking. Thank you. For everything. And then she disappeared into the tunnel with Lily, the last sight being the girl's green eyes, full of tears and terror, looking back at the man who had become her protector. The panic room door exploded. And Richard Sterling, billionaire, CEO, man who had lost everything, stood face to face with the demon. Tyler Morrison smiled. Showtime, Playboy. Tyler Morrison was even bigger in person. 6'3" of muscle and pure hatred, with tattoos covering his massive arms and a scar running across his face. He entered the destroyed panic room like a predator entering a cage. Richard Sterling stood on the other side, holding the gun with hands that refused to tremble. He wasn't a fighter. He was a businessman. But today, he would be whatever he needed to be. Where's the girl? Tyler growled, his scanning eyes searching for Lily. Far from you, Richard responded. Where she always should have been. Tyler laughed, a deep and menacing sound. You're brave, I'll give you that. Or just stupid. Probably stupid. He took a step forward. You know what I'm going to do to you, Sterling? I'm going to break every bone in your Playboy body. And then, I'm going to find that girl, no matter where you hid her. And I'm going to make you watch before you die. Try, Richard said, and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the room. Tyler threw himself to the side with surprising speed for his size. The bullet hit the wall behind him. "Bad idea," Tyler hissed and attacked. What followed was brutal. Tyler ripped the gun from Richard's hand with a violent movement that almost broke his wrist. Then came the first punch, hitting Richard's face and sending him against the wall. Richard had never been beaten like this in his life. Each blow was like being hit by a hammer. He tried to defend himself, but Tyler was an experienced street fighter, and Richard was just a desperate man. "This is for the time you made me waste," Tyler shouted, hitting Richard's ribs. Something cracked. "This is for sticking your nose where it wasn't wanted." Another punch. "And this," he grabbed Richard by the collar and lifted him, "is because I can." He threw Richard through what remained of the panic room door. Richard fell heavily onto the library's marble floor, tasting blood in his mouth. Tyler walked slowly toward him, savoring every moment. "You know what's funny, Sterling? You really thought you could beat me. A rich businessman playing hero. But in the real world, in my world, men like you don't last 5 minutes." Richard spit blood and tried to get up. Everything hurt. His ribs were broken, he was sure. Maybe his arm too. But he couldn't stop. Not while there was still air in his lungs. "You'll never get her," Richard gasped. "Oh no." Tyler crouched down, grabbing Richard by the hair and forcing him to look into his dead eyes. "Let me tell you a secret, Sterling. I don't want the girl because I care about her. I want her because she's worth $50,000. $50,000 that'll go straight into my pocket when I sell her to the right buyers. She's merchandise. And expensive merchandise." The rage gave Richard one last burst of energy. He spit in Tyler's face. Tyler wiped the spit slowly, his face transforming into something animalistic. Fatal mistake. He raised his fist for the final blow. The blow that would kill Richard Sterling. And that's when the elevator doors opened. "FBI. Freeze." James Bradley entered with a full SWAT team. 10 agents, all with weapons pointed directly at Tyler. Tyler froze, his fists still in the air. "Tyler Morrison, you're under arrest," Bradley announced. "For breaking and entering, attempted murder, human trafficking, and about 15 other federal charges that will guarantee you never see daylight again." "You set a trap," Tyler said to Richard, understanding and fury in his eyes. Richard, bleeding and broken on the floor, managed to smile. "I told you, you were an idiot. This entire apartment is bugged. Every word, every threat, recorded. You confessed, human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder. Everything." The realization hit Tyler like a train. He had been tricked. Manipulated by a man he had underestimated. "You're going to pay for this." Tyler roared as agents took him down and handcuffed him. "You hear me? You'll pay." "No," Bradley said calmly, "you're the one who's going to pay. For the rest of your miserable life." As they dragged Tyler out, he screamed threats, fighting against the handcuffs. But it was over. Finally over. Richard tried to get up and fell back, the pain unbearable. "Paramedics!" Bradley shouted, running to his side. "Hang in there, Richard. You did it. You got him. Lily." Richard whispered. "Is she safe?" "With Margaret. In a safe location. Waiting for you." Richard closed his eyes, finally letting the tears fall. Tears of pain, of relief, of something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. 2 days later, Richard Sterling woke up in a private hospital room at Mount Sinai. His body was covered in bandages, 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, bruises everywhere. But he was alive. And Tyler Morrison was in a federal cell, no bail, facing charges that would guarantee life in prison. The room door opened softly. Richard expected to see Bradley or perhaps his lawyer. Instead, he saw Margaret. And behind her, holding her hand tightly, was Lily. The girl looked at Richard with her huge green eyes, now filled with tears. She let go of Margaret's hand and ran to the bedside. "Richard," she cried. "You're hurt. You're so hurt." "I'm okay," Richard said, his voice hoarse. He extended his good hand, and she held it tightly. "I'm okay because you're safe. That's what made it all worth it." "Is he gone?" Lily asked in such a small voice. "Is the bad man gone forever?" "Forever," Richard promised. "He'll never hurt you again. Never." Lily carefully climbed onto the bed, being careful not to hurt Richard, and nestled against his uninjured side. She cried. She cried all the fear, all the trauma, all the terror of the last 2 years. And Richard held her, his hand stroking her curly brown hair, and he cried too. Cried for the first time since losing Emma. Margaret stood at the door, her own tears falling silently. "Mr. Sterling," she said softly, "you saved my granddaughter. Risked your life for her. How can I ever thank you?" Richard looked at Lily, who was now sleeping against him, finally at peace for the first time in years. "You don't need to," he said. "She saved me too." And it was true. That small, frightened child who had lived hidden in a basement for 2 years had done something that no therapist, no friend, no amount of money could do. She had brought Richard Sterling back to life. Bradley entered the room shortly after, with a smile on his face. "Good news. With Tyler's recorded confession and the evidence we collected, he's finished. And not just him." The investigation led to arrest warrants for 12 more Los Diablos members, including 3 corrupt officers who were on their payroll. "And Lily?" Richard asked. "What's her legal status?" Bradley looked at Margaret. "That depends. Margaret is the biological grandmother. With Tyler in prison and Sarah deceased, she has legal right to custody." Margaret approached the bed. "Mr. Sterling, I know I have no right to ask this, but..." She hesitated. "Lily needs more than I can give her. She needs a real home, education, opportunities. And she's already attached to you." Richard looked at the girl sleeping against him. "What are you suggesting?" "Shared custody," Margaret said. "I'm her grandmother, but you can be the father she never had. Together, we can give her everything she needs." Richard felt his heart tighten. A second chance. A chance to be a father again. He looked at Lily, and then at Margaret. "Yes," he said simply. "Yes." And in that moment, in a hospital room in the heart of Manhattan, a new family was born from the ashes of tragedy. An unlikely family, formed by secrets, survival, and a love that grew in the darkest places. 3 months after Tyler Morrison's arrest, life in the Fifth Avenue penthouse was unrecognizable. The apartment that had once been a silent mausoleum of painful memories now echoed with a child's laughter. The room that had belonged to Emma had been carefully transformed, not erased, never erased, but gently adapted for Lily. Richard had stored Emma's most precious belongings in special boxes that Lily could see when she was ready, but the space now had new life. Lavender walls, a canopy bed filled with fluffy pillows, shelves full of new books, toys that Lily had personally chosen on a magical trip to FAO Schwartz. For the first time in 2 years, Lily had a real room. A real home. But the transformation wasn't easy. In the first few weeks, Lily woke up screaming every night, nightmares about Tyler chasing her, coming back for her. Richard would run to her room, hold her while she cried, repeating endlessly, "You're safe. He's gone. I'm here." Margaret was there too, of course. She had moved into one of the guest rooms, forming a strange but functional family unit. During the day, she took care of Lily while Richard worked, but at night, It was Richard who read bedtime stories, who checked under the bed for monsters Lily feared, who promised that nothing bad would ever reach her again. "Why do you do this?" Lily asked one night as Richard finished reading The Little Prince for the 5th time. "Do what?" Richard asked, closing the book. "Take care of me. You're so important, so busy. You have companies to run, important meetings. But every night you're here, reading to me, checking my room, staying until I fall asleep." Richard set down the book and looked at that 6-year-old girl who had become the center of his universe in such a short time. "Lily, do you know what the greatest tragedy of my life was?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Losing your daughter and your wife." "Yes. But do you know what the biggest mistake was? Not being there. When Emma needed me, I was in meetings. When Catherine asked me to leave early, I said I had important work. I chose business over my family, and then, they were gone. And I never got the chance to fix that." Tears filled his eyes. "But you," he gently touched Lily's face, "you gave me a second chance. A chance to be the father I should have been. And this time, Lily, I'm going to do it right. There's no meeting, no business, nothing in this world more important than you." Lily threw her arms around Richard's neck and cried, "I love you, Richard. I know I shouldn't say that because you're not my real dad, but I love you." Richard's heart broke and healed at the same time. "Lily Rose," he said, using her full name for the first time, "I love you too. And if you'll let me, I would very much like to be your father. For real. Forever." "Forever?" she asked, her green eyes shining with hope. "Forever." Richard Sterling's transformation was noticed by everyone around him. At the office, he now left at 5 in the afternoon, without exception. Meetings were rescheduled. Business trips were minimized. His team was shocked at first, but soon got used to the new Richard, a man who was still brilliant and ruthless in business, but who now had something more important waiting for him at home. He hired the best child therapist in New York to work with Lily, helping her process the trauma. Dr. Helena Santos was a specialist in children who had survived abuse and trafficking, and she saw in Lily not just a broken child, but a resilient survivor. "She's remarkable," Dr. Santos told Richard after the 5th session. "The trauma is there, no doubt. But she has incredible inner strength. And do you know why? Why? Because she finally has something she never had before. Security. Unconditional love. Someone to trust completely. You're giving her that, Mr. Sterling. And you're saving her life in ways that go far beyond the physical." Richard also noticed changes in himself. For the first time in 5 years, he smiled for real. Laughed for real. The apartment was full of life again. Lily's drawings covering the refrigerator. He bought a regular refrigerator just to have somewhere to stick drawings. Music playing during dinner, conversations about what happened at school. Because yes, Lily now went to school. Richard enrolled her at the Dalton School, one of Manhattan's most prestigious private schools. At first, Lily was terrified. She had never been to a school, never interacted with other children her age. The first day was a disaster. Lily had a panic attack and Richard was called to pick her up after only 2 hours. He found her in the principal's office, huddled in a chair, crying. "I can't do it," she sobbed. "There are too many people. Too much noise. What if the bad man finds out where I am?" Richard knelt in front of her. "Lily, look at me. Tyler is in a maximum security federal prison. He will never, ever get out. And even if he did, he'd have to get through me first. And you know what I discovered?" She shook her head. "I discovered I'm much stronger than I thought. Because I have something to fight for now. I have you." It took 3 weeks, but Lily gradually adjusted. She made her first friend, Sophie, a cheerful girl with braces who invited her to sit at lunch. Then came Emma, ironically with the same name as Richard's daughter, and then Michael, and then a whole group of children who accepted Lily simply as she was. The first time Lily came home from school smiling, excitedly telling him about her day, Richard had to lock himself in the bathroom to cry with happiness. Margaret watched the transformation of both with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. "Mr. Sterling," she said one evening after Lily had gone to sleep, "I want you to know what you did for us, what you continue to do. There are no words." Richard was in the living room, organizing photos. He had finally started going through the albums of Catherine and Emma, not to forget them, but to honor them in a healthy way. "Margaret, you gave me my life back," he said simply. "If you hadn't hidden Lily in that basement, if you hadn't been brave enough to protect her, she wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. Not like this." He picked up a photo he was organizing, a new one, taken last week in Central Park. Richard, Margaret, and Lily, covered in snow, all smiling. "A family. For 5 years, I was dead inside," Richard continued. "Just functioning, just existing. Lily brought me back to life. She reminded me why living is worthwhile." Margaret wiped away a tear. "She calls you Dad when you're not around," she revealed softly. "To me, to her school friends. My dad is going to pick me up. My dad took me to the museum. My dad reads me stories every night." Richard's heart filled to near bursting. "I want to adopt her," he said suddenly. "Officially. Legally. I want her to be my daughter in every way. If you'll allow it." Margaret smiled through tears. "Mr. Sterling, I allow it. With all my heart." That night, Richard went into Lily's room to check on her one last time before bed. She was sleeping peacefully, the teddy bear hugged against her chest, a small smile on her face. He adjusted the blanket around her and kissed her forehead. "Good night, my daughter," he whispered. And for the first time in 5 years, Richard Sterling went to sleep with a complete heart. Healing had begun. For both of them. And the best was yet to come. 6 months after Tyler Morrison was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, something extraordinary happened in the Fifth Avenue penthouse. Lily laughed. Not a nervous giggle or a timid smile. A loud, genuine belly laugh that came from deep within her soul. Richard was trying to make pancakes, with questionable success, on a Saturday morning when he burned the third attempt, setting off the fire alarm. Lily found it so funny that she fell back in her chair laughing, tears of joy streaming down her face. Margaret came running into the kitchen, thinking there was an emergency, only to find Richard waving a dish towel at the smoke detector while Lily laughed uncontrollably. "What's so funny?" Richard asked, but he was smiling too. "You," Lily managed to say between laughs. "You run a billion-dollar company but you can't make pancakes." It was the first time Lily had made a joke. The first time she was just a normal child, doing normal child things. And Richard realized, his heart tight with emotion, that she was finally healing. Therapy with Dr. Santos was working wonders. Lily still had occasional nightmares, but now they were less frequent. Once or twice a week instead of every night. And when they came, she knew Richard would be there, no matter the time. "She's ready for the next step," Dr. Santos told Richard in one of their follow-up sessions. "It's time for her to confront her past in a healthy way. Write about it, talk about it, process it completely." "She's so strong," Richard said, admiration in his voice. "She is. But strength doesn't mean she doesn't need to cry. It doesn't mean she won't have bad days. It means she's learning that she can survive them." And Lily proved that repeatedly. There was the day she saw a large man with tattoos in the park and froze, absolute terror in her eyes. But instead of running or having a breakdown, she grabbed Richard's hand and took a deep breath, just as Dr. Santos had taught her. "It's not him," she whispered to herself. "Tyler is in prison. I'm safe. I'm with my dad. Richard felt his heart overflow when she called him dad for the first time directly. That's right, sweetheart, he said, squeezing her hand. You're safe with me. Always. Richard was also changing in profound ways. He started therapy again, something he had abandoned after Catherine and Emma's death. His therapist, Dr. Michael Chen, helped him process not only the guilt over losing his first family, but also the fear of losing Lily. You're afraid to fully attach, Dr. Chen observed during a session. Afraid that if you love Lily completely, something will tear her away from you too. What if it happens? Richard asked, his voice breaking. What if I lose her like I lost Emma? Then you will have loved completely, Dr. Chen said gently. And that's never a mistake. Richard, you spent 5 years avoiding living because you were afraid of losing again. But look at you now. You're alive. You're loving. You're being a father. And yes, that means risks. But it also means happiness. It means purpose. Richard thought about that night, watching Lily do homework at the dining table, her tongue sticking out slightly as she concentrated on a math problem. Her curly brown hair fell over her eyes and she pushed it back impatiently, exactly like Catherine used to do. He realized he wasn't trying to replace Emma. Lily was her own person, wonderful and unique. But she had filled a void in his heart that he thought would stay empty forever. And yes, there was risk in loving. But love was worth the risk. In August, 7 months after Tyler's imprisonment, Richard took the next big step. He called Lily and Margaret for a special meeting in the living room. He had documents spread out on the Italian coffee table, and his heart was beating so fast he thought he might have a heart attack. What is this? Lily asked, curious. Richard knelt in front of her, taking her small hands in his. Lily rose. I know you call me Dad. And I call you my daughter. And our hearts know we're family. But. He took a deep breath. I would like to make this official. Legal. Permanent. Lily's eyes widened. These are adoption papers, Richard continued, his voice trembling with emotion. If you sign, and your grandma Margaret signs, and the judge approves, you'll become legally my daughter. Lily rose sterling. Forever. Lily looked at the papers, then at Margaret, then back at Richard. Forever, she whispered. Forever, Richard promised. No one can take you from me. You'll be my daughter in the eyes of the law, society, and the whole world. You'll have my name, my protection, my unconditional love. Forever. Tears began streaming down Lily's face. I want that, she said, her voice small but firm. I want to be your real daughter. Richard pulled her into a tight hug while Margaret cried with joy. The adoption process took 3 months. Interviews with social workers, psychological evaluations, background checks, though Richard Sterling obviously passed with flying colors, home visits. It was during one of these visits that the social worker, a kind woman named Patricia Williams, made an observation that touched Richard deeply. Mr. Sterling, in 20 years doing this work, I've never seen a transformation like what I've seen here. This child arrived traumatized, frightened, hidden from the world. And now. She looked at Lily, who was proudly showing off her room and her school drawings. She's flourishing. And so are you. She saved me as much as I saved her, Richard said simply. That's clear, Patricia smiled. This adoption will be approved. I'm absolutely certain. Finally, on a cold November day, Richard, Lily, and Margaret stood before Judge Andrea Morrison, no relation to Tyler fortunately, at the Manhattan Family Court. The judge, an African-American woman in her early 50s with a kind smile, looked over the documents. Lily rose, she said gently. Do you understand what it means to be adopted? Lily, wearing a blue dress she had chosen especially for the occasion, nodded seriously. It means Richard will be my dad forever. That I'll have his last name. That no one can separate us. And is that what you want? More than anything, Lily said with conviction. The judge looked at Richard. Mr. Sterling, do you understand the responsibility you're taking on? Lily will need love, patience, support. She carries traumas that may take years to heal completely. I understand, Richard said firmly. And I'm ready. More than ready. I want to be the father she deserves. Forever. The judge smiled. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of New York, I declare this adoption legal and binding. Richard Sterling, you are officially the legal father of Lily Rose Sterling. Congratulations to you both. The gavel came down. And Lily Sterling, no longer Lily O'Brien, but Lily Rose Sterling, jumped from her chair and threw herself into her father's arms, crying with happiness. I love you, Dad, she sobbed. I love you, my daughter, Richard responded, tears flowing freely down his face. My daughter. Forever. Margaret was crying in the back row, her hands over her heart, witnessing the miracle she had helped create. A family born from secrecy, forged in trauma, and cemented in love. They walked out of the courthouse into the cold November afternoon, but for all three of them, the world had never felt warmer. Lily Rose Sterling was home. Finally. 1 year and 2 months after the adoption, on Christmas Eve 2024, Richard Sterling was in his office when he received a call that made his blood freeze. Mr. Sterling. It's James Bradley. I need you to stay calm. Richard's heart raced. What happened? Tyler Morrison was found dead in his cell this morning. Apparent suicide. Richard sat down heavily in his chair, processing the information. Tyler was dead. The monster who had haunted Lily's nightmares for years was finally, definitively, gone. Does Lily need to know? Richard asked. I think so, Bradley responded. It's closure. She needs to know that he can never, ever hurt her again. Telling Lily was one of the hardest things Richard ever had to do. He waited until Margaret was present, and sat down with Lily in the living room, the fireplace crackling softly in the background. His daughter was now 7 years old, taller, stronger, with confidence shining in her green eyes. Lily, sweetheart, I need to tell you something important, Richard began, holding her hands. What is it, Dad? She asked, and there was only the slightest shadow of fear in her voice. She had come so far. Tyler Morrison died. He's no longer in this world. He can never hurt you or any other child again. Lily became very quiet. Richard watched emotions pass across her face. Shock, confusion, and then, something he didn't expect. I should be happy, she finally said, her voice trembling. He was bad. He hurt me. He hurt my mommy. But... Tears began to fall. But why do I feel sad? Margaret moved closer, placing an arm around Lily. Because you have a good heart, dear, she said gently. Because even after everything he did, you don't wish death on anyone. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. It makes you better than he ever was. Can I tell you something? Lily asked, looking at Richard with wet eyes. Anything. I used to have nightmares about him every night. But do you know what my biggest fear was? What? That he would come and you would try to defend me, but he would hurt you. That he would kill you. And that I would be alone again. Tears were falling freely now. I already lost my mommy. I can't lose you too, Dad. Richard pulled Lily into his arms, holding her tightly. You'll never lose me, he promised. Never. I'll be here for every birthday, every graduation, every important moment of your life. I'll walk you down the aisle when you get married. I'll meet my grandchildren. I'll be here, Lily. Always. Promise. Promise. Lily cried for a long time, but this time they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of release. The ghost that had haunted her for years was finally exorcised. When she finally pulled away, there was a lightness in her eyes that Richard had never seen before. "Can I show you something?" she asked. "Of course." Lily ran to her room and came back with a notebook. It was her therapy journal, where Dr. Santos had encouraged her to write and draw her feelings. "I made this yesterday," she said, opening to a specific page. It was a drawing. On the left side, there was a smaller version of Lily, huddled, dark, with storms around her. On the right side, there was Lily as she was now. Taller, colorful, smiling, with sunshine and flowers around her. Between the two versions was a bridge. And on the bridge, holding the hand of the small dark Lily and leading her to the colorful Lily, was Richard. "You're my bridge," Lily explained. "You took me from darkness to light. And now," she turned the page to a new drawing, "I'll keep walking in the light. Sometimes alone, but knowing you're always there if I need you." Richard couldn't hold back the tears. That night, after Lily went to sleep, Richard went to the room that had been Emma's. He opened it for the first time in months. Margaret had helped him transform it into a small memorial. Beautiful photos of Emma and Catherine on the walls, their favorite things carefully arranged, but no longer untouched like a mausoleum. Richard sat on the floor, looking at a photo of Emma on her 5th birthday, smiling with chocolate cake all over her face. "Hi, Princess," he whispered. "It's been a while since we really talked." He took a deep breath. "I met someone. Well, actually you already knew her. Lily. Margaret's granddaughter. She needed a father. And I needed a daughter. I know you would like her, Emma. You two would have been best friends." Tears streamed down. "I felt guilty at first. Guilty for moving on. Guilty for loving another child when I should be loving you. But then I realized something." He touched the photo gently. "Loving Lily doesn't mean I love you less. It means you taught me how to love. And that love didn't die with you. It grew, expanded, and now it's saving another life." He was silent for a moment. "I hope you're proud of me, Princess. I finally became the father I should have been for you. And I know it's too late for us, but it's not too late for Lily. Every time I read to her, every time I protect her, every time I make her laugh, it's for you too. It's my way of honoring your memory. By being for her what I should have been for you." He kissed the photo. "I love you, Emma. Forever. And I know that wherever you are, you understand. And you're happy because I'm happy again." When Richard left the room, he didn't close the door. He left it ajar. Because memories didn't need to be locked away. They could coexist with the present. With the future. On Christmas morning, Lily woke Richard up early, jumping on his bed with the typical energy of a 7-year-old on Christmas. Dad, it's Christmas. Snow. Presents. Pancakes." Richard groaned theatrically, but he was smiling. "Pancakes? You trust me making pancakes?" "No." Lily laughed. "That's why Grandma's making them." They went downstairs together, hand in hand. The Christmas tree they had decorated together sparkled majestically in the living room, presents piled underneath. Margaret was in the kitchen, making pancakes and bacon, filling the apartment with delicious aromas. "Merry Christmas," she sang when she saw them. It was the complete opposite of Christmas 2 years ago. That Christmas had brought discovery, shock, fear. This Christmas brought love, laughter, family. After opening presents, Lily got a new bicycle she had asked for, books, clothes, and a special bracelet from Richard with L.R.S. engraved. Lily rose Sterling. They sat together on the sofa. "Dad," Lily said suddenly. "Yes, sweetheart. Thank you." "For what?" for finding me, for saving me, for loving me. Richard kissed the top of her head. Lily, you did as much for me as I did for you. You brought me back to life, gave me purpose again, taught me that it's possible to love again after losing everything. So thank you too. Margaret raised her mug of hot chocolate. A toast, she said, her voice emotional. To family. Not the one we're born into, but the one we choose. The one we build with love, forgiveness, and second chances. They toasted, three people that fate had brought together in the most unlikely way. And outside, snow continued to fall over Manhattan, covering the city in pure white. A new beginning. A new life. A new family. Forged in darkness, but shining in the light. Snow fell softly over Manhattan on Christmas Eve. The Fifth Avenue penthouse was filled with life, laughter and love, sounds that were no longer new, but still made Richard Sterling's heart tighten with gratitude every time. Dad. They're here. Lily shouted from the entrance. But this was no longer the frightened 6-year-old girl. Lily Rose Sterling was 18 now, a stunning young woman studying child psychology at Columbia University. Her curly brown hair fell in waves over her shoulders, her green eyes sparkled with confidence and compassion, and her smile, that smile that took years to fully bloom, lit up any room. Richard, now 55 with some distinguished gray strands at his temples, walked to the entrance. Margaret, now 70 but still vibrant and strong, was helping the guests with their coats. The guests were special. Very special. 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, between 6 and 9 years old, entered the apartment timidly. They had the same expression Lily had 12 years ago. Fear. Caution. But also, fragile hope. Because Richard Sterling hadn't stopped with Lily. Over the last 10 years, he had dedicated half his fortune and all his free heart to one cause: saving children from human trafficking. He had created the Emma and Lily Sterling Foundation, named in honor of both his daughters, which worked with the FBI, international agencies, and survivors to rescue children and give them a second chance. These 3 children were the most recent. Rescued 2 weeks ago from a trafficking ring in New Jersey. No family. Nowhere to go. Terrified and broken. But not for long. Welcome, Richard said gently, kneeling to get to their level. My name is Richard. I know you're scared. I know you don't know what's going to happen. But I can promise one thing. Here, you're safe. Here, you're loved. And here, no one will ever hurt you again. The smallest of the girls, only 6 years old, began to cry. Lily approached, kneeling beside Richard. Hi, she said softly. My name is Lily. And 12 years ago, I was exactly where you are. I was afraid. I was alone. I didn't know if I would ever feel safe again. She took the girl's hand. But this man here, my father, he saved me. He gave me a family. He gave me love. He gave me a life. And now, she looked at the 3 children with eyes full of tears and compassion. We want to do the same for you. Christmas dinner was magical. The huge dining table was full. Richard at the head, Margaret by his side. Lily and the 3 new children, Sarah, Emma, Richard had to laugh at fate using that name again, and little Marcus, named in honor of the security guard who had died protecting Lily all those years ago. But there were more guests. James Bradley was there with his wife, Dr. Helena Santos, who was now director of child trauma at the foundation, and 3 other young women, former beneficiaries of the foundation that Richard and Lily had helped over the years, now successful adults, following their own careers, but always coming back to this family that had saved them. I want to make a toast, Richard said, standing with his wine glass. Everyone became quiet, looking at the man who had transformed from a reclusive and broken billionaire into a father, mentor, and savior of dozens of lives. 12 years ago, Richard began, his voice emotional, I was dead inside. I had lost everything I loved and saw no reason to continue. I just existed, counting the days until my own death. He looked at Margaret. And then this brave woman, who risked everything to protect her granddaughter, gave me the greatest gift I could receive. She gave me purpose. She gave me love. She gave me. His voice broke as he looked at Lily. She gave me my daughter. Lily was crying now, tears flowing freely down her face. Lily, Richard continued, you saved my life as much as I saved yours. You taught me that it's possible to love again, that it's possible to heal, that it's possible to transform pain into purpose, tragedy into triumph, and darkness into light. He turned to the 3 new children, who watched him with wide eyes. And now, we continue that legacy. Because every child deserves to feel safe. Every child deserves love. Every child deserves a chance to dream, to grow, to become everything they can be. Richard raised his glass higher. So I toast to family. Not just those connected by blood, but those connected by love. Those we choose. Those who choose us. And those who save each other, every day, just by being present. To family! Everyone repeated, glasses raised. And in that moment, in the Fifth Avenue penthouse, surrounded by people he loved and who loved him back, Richard Sterling knew he had found his redemption. Later that night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Richard found Lily on the balcony, looking at the snow-covered city. Can't sleep? He asked, placing a coat around her shoulders. Just thinking, she said softly, about how everything changed. About how, if Grandma hadn't been brave enough to hide me in that basement, I wouldn't be here. About how, if you hadn't gone down those stairs that night. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. You know what I think, Richard said, putting his arm around her. I think everything happens for a reason. I lost Emma and Catherine. It hurt in a way I thought I'd never overcome. And I didn't overcome it, not completely. It still hurts. It always will. He looked at her. But that pain prepared me to love you, to understand how precious every moment is, to never, ever take a second for granted. Emma and Catherine taught me to love. And you taught me to love again. Lily turned and hugged her father tightly. I love you so much, Dad. More than words can express. I love you too, my daughter. My Lily. My light. They stayed like that for a long moment, father and daughter, united not by blood but by something much stronger. United by survival, by choice, by unconditional love. Dad. Lily said suddenly. Yes. Those 3 children in there. Sarah, Emma, Marcus, they're going to stay, right? You won't send them away. Richard smiled. Lily, I learned a long time ago that my heart has infinite capacity to love. Of course they're going to stay. This family keeps growing. And there's room for everyone. Lily smiled through tears. Then I guess I'll have to teach them what you taught me. How to be strong. How to heal. How to love despite the pain. You're going to be amazing at it, Richard said proudly. Actually, you already are. From the apartment behind them, they heard the sound of children's laughter. Margaret was telling stories to the children, her warm and loving voice floating through the night. Richard looked at the starry sky above Manhattan. Wherever you are, Emma, Catherine, I hope you can see this. I hope you know your love didn't die. It just multiplied, expanded, and now it's saving lives. Thank you for teaching me to love. And thank you for sending me Lily. Lily looked up too, and whispered her own words to the sky. Thank you, Mom Sarah. I know you had your demons, but you gave me life. And that life is making a difference now. I hope you found peace. Father and daughter stood on the balcony for a few more minutes, in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall over the city that never sleeps. A city where, 12 years ago, a broken billionaire discovered a secret that would change everything. A secret hidden in the basement. A frightened child. And a second chance for both. And now, that second chance was turning into third chances, fourth chances, infinite chances for children who needed them. Because Richard Sterling had learned the most important lesson of all. Love doesn't diminish when shared. It multiplies. And in multiplication, everyone is saved. And you, dear friend? If this story touched your heart, if you felt every emotion, every tear, every moment of hope, leave your like on this video. Subscribe to the channel to continue experiencing stories that transform, that move us, that remind us of the power of love and redemption. Comment below, which part of the story moved you the most? Was it when Richard discovered Lily in the basement? When he faced Tyler? When Lily called him Dad for the first time? Or the ending, showing how love multiplied? We want to know. Your opinion is very important to us. And if you need hope, if you're going through difficult times, remember the message of this story. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to love again. And there is always, always hope. Continue the marathon. We have dozens of other emotional stories waiting for you on the channel. Stories of overcoming, of love, of second chances that will warm your heart. Thank you so much for being here with us. You are special. You are important. And you are part of this family. See you in the next story.